All right, let's get right into it. A pretty quiet announcement just came out of Beijing, and it's already sending these huge shockwaves through, well, pretty much every major industry you can think of. Tech, auto, defense. We're talking about a brand new policy on a group of materials you probably don't think about much, but trust me, you use them every single day. They're called rare earth elements.
And that's really the perfect way to describe what just happened. This wasn't some big, loud proclamation. It was a subtle rule change, a whisper, that's now turned into a deafening roar in boardrooms from Silicon Valley all the way to Stuttgart. It's a massive wake-up call, showing just how fragile our global supply chains really are.
So to really get our heads around this, here's how we're going to break it down. We'll start with the announcement itself. Then, we'll cover what rare earths actually are. After that, we'll dig into China's incredible dominance in this space. Then we'll look at the immediate ripple effects hitting tech. And finally, we'll talk about the global race to find alternatives. All right, first up, the shock announcement. Let's unpack what Beijing actually put on the table.
You know, the sheer scope of these new rules is, well, it's staggering. This thing is called Announcement Number 61 of 2025, and it's a real game changer. China now requires a special government license to export any item that has even a tiny trace of rare earths in it. Think about that. They're also locking down the export of the technology used to process these metals. And here's the kicker. They've put a complete, categorical ban on any exports that could be tied to military use. This is, hands down, the tightest grip they have ever put on this market.
Okay, so that naturally leads to the next question. What are these things anyway, and why do they matter so much?
So in a nutshell, rare earth elements are a group of 17 metals on the periodic table. And they have these really unique magnetic and electronic properties that make them indispensable for modern tech. Now, here's a fun fact. Despite the name rare, they're not actually all that rare in the Earth's crust. The real trick, the challenge, is finding them in places where it's actually economical to mine them, and then you have to separate and refine them, which is an incredibly complex and, frankly, pretty dirty process.
And you can see just how essential they are when you look at where they're used. They are the secret ingredient in those super powerful magnets that run electric car motors. They're what make your smartphone screen so vibrant and the speakers so tiny yet so loud. But it goes way beyond that. They're absolutely critical for defense tech. We're talking missile guidance systems, advanced radar, you name it. They are, quite literally, the invisible backbone of our high-tech world.
And this brings us right to the heart of the matter, China's incredible dominance over the entire supply chain. And I really want to stress that phrase, entire supply chain. This isn't just about digging rocks out of the ground. This is a level of control built on decades of very deliberate, very strategic industrial policy.
So let's look at the first step, mining. China accounts for about 70% of the world's output. Now that's a huge number, no question about it. But believe it or not, that's not even the whole story. The real choke point, the source of Beijing's true leverage, is what happens after those rocks come out of the ground.
And here it is. China controls roughly 90% of the global processing and refining of rare earths. This is the hard part, the technical, complicated, and often polluting part of the process where you turn raw ore into the super pure metals and magnets that companies actually need. For decades, China was willing to take on the environmental costs that other countries just weren't, and that allowed them to build this near-total monopoly.
This has effectively made China the world's indispensable middleman. It's kind of wild when you think about it. Even rare earths mined in places like the United States or Australia often have to be put on a ship and sent to China for processing. Why? Because the rest of the world just doesn't have the capacity. And that gives Beijing this incredible leverage over the entire global supply.
And make no mistake, this isn't some new strategy they just came up with. If you look back, in 2010, China briefly cut off exports to Japan during a political dispute, and it sent absolute panic through global markets. That move led to a WTO complaint, and China eventually backed off a little. But they never gave up their dominance in processing. This latest move, it's just the next and by far the most aggressive chapter in a long-running strategic game.
Okay, so what has been the immediate fallout from this announcement? Well, the ripple effects were felt almost instantly.
The economic hit was immediate, and it was sharp. Prices for critical magnet materials like neodymium and dysprosium, and these are absolutely vital for things like EV motors and wind turbines. They shot up. We're talking 30 to 50% almost overnight as the market started to panic about a much, much tighter supply.
And we're seeing this pain play out across different sectors. German automakers are already warning that the production of key sensors and motors is now at risk. For defense contractors, the supply for mission-critical systems is severely strained. And for all of us with consumer electronics, this could mean delays and higher prices. Right now, companies are just scrambling, trying to figure out if they can even get the parts they need to build their products.
So as you can imagine, all of this has kicked off a frantic global race to find alternatives. But the big question hanging over everyone's head is, can the rest of the world actually catch up? Now, there are definitely contenders out there. The US has the Mountain Pass mine, which is run by a company called MP Materials. Australia has some pretty significant reserves. And you see potential projects popping up in places like Canada, Brazil, and Vietnam. Even in Europe, there's a new facility in the UK called Pensana Saltend that's aiming to produce about 5% of the world's magnet metals. So the effort is there for sure.
But, and this is a huge but, the hurdles are just massive. To build the kind of refining plants you'd need to actually challenge China requires enormous amounts of capital. These projects take years to get up and running, not months. Plus, Western countries have much stricter environmental regulations, which adds a lot of time and cost. And maybe most importantly, there's a huge gap in the specialized expertise needed to do this kind of work at scale.
And that really leaves us with this one huge open question. Can the world actually invest the billions of dollars needed and navigate the years of regulatory and technical challenges required to build a new, secure supply chain before it's too late? Because ultimately, that's the real lesson here. This move by China is a powerful reminder that in the high-stakes world of 21st century tech and defense, controlling these essential raw materials isn't just about business. It's about power.